Hi, I'm Megan Stakowski, and welcome to another HMC HealthWorks podcast. Today, we welcome back for a third time child psychotherapist, Sarah Foe. Sarah, you have been so gracious with your time and knowledge, and I really just want to give you a big thank you for being with us today.
Megan, it's great to be back, and I'm really excited about chatting today.
Well, today we're going to tackle what can be a very challenging and trying parenting situation, screen time. Before COVID, this was a topic that was, debated among parents and experts alike. And now, with screens being so needed and critical for school and staying connected with family and friends, it's even harder for parents to know how to handle them. So, lucky for us, Sarah, you're going to help. Let's just jump in and talk with what you see with your practice when it comes to kids and screens.
Megan, it's really great that we're having this opportunity today because even in my professional practice, but as well as being a parent, this is something that comes up daily. And a big part of it is because our children, many of them have been still remote, or, have a hybrid school day model, which is still partly remote. And so the screen is built in as part of our school day and part of our child's lives, where maybe before we didn't have this much screen time. And so, and even being as part of the therapy practice, I will meet clients often online for their therapy sessions. Some are coming back in person, but there's also many who are still opting for online sessions as well. So again, even just receiving therapy services or piano lessons or taekwondo, art lessons, things are still happening online as well, or have been for an extended period of time, where children, that's become their main outlet to connect, as you mentioned, with friends, as well as with resources and the activities they really enjoy pre-COVID, or even something they tried maybe that was new during COVID. So in my practice, it's really ran a full gamut of how children have responded to this. And I can't wait to kind of really answer your question, but before I do that, I really want to take a couple steps back and just say that for parents that, whatever you're doing, you're trying your best and it's going to be okay. I think there's a lot of pressure, and we're balancing a lot of different things as the grown-ups in the family system right now, and just to let ourselves know that, hey, it's okay. We're going to get through this. We can shift things. Things are movable and malleable in this moment, and maybe right now they have a lot of screen time because it's how our day has to function. Doesn't mean how it has to always be. And so we're going to talk today just about some ways to build healthy habits around screen time, letting ourselves be kind of aware of why it's so important to our kids, and also taking a little bit of a reflection to ourselves as to how screens are involved in our lives.
All of that sounds perfect, and I think as a parent myself, it's really nice to hear you say that. It's how it is today isn't how it always has to be, and we really are just doing our best. So,
Absolutely.
So
And as I think about this, I really want to invite our listeners to kind of start back a few years back. So I'm not sure how old everyone's children are that are listening, but truly this can range from whenever your children start using screens to if it's part of their school day or if they're a teen, and they're, maybe their screen is a very important part of their social and academic life. If we took a step back and instead of addressing the screen issue, taking a look at what is most meaningful to our children. So what that means is looking at, you could pick your child's top favorite things to do right now. Where do they spend their time? Where are they most organized? What do they like to talk to you about or talk with their friends about? What are their three most important things? So for some kids, that could be, I'm thinking of my 9-year-old, that's Legos, playing sports outside, and screen time. But I'm also thinking of my 6-year-old, and that's his playing sports. And so I think it just depends. Each child has their own most meaningful things. And as we look at our child's most meaningful things, it's also important for us to pause and invite ourselves to look, what is as a parent, as an individual, and so what are our most important things? And I find it helpful even to write down because these are changing too. Maybe pre-pandemic they were one thing, maybe mid-pandemic they were another, maybe right now there's something else. And it's kind of like when you lay in bed at night, when you think about, or when you have some spare time, what do you look up online, and where do you spend your money as a grown up? What are your go-to daydreams, or where are you most organized? Similar to our children, we all have things that are most meaningful to us. And once we're able to identify what our most meaningful things are, what our child's most meaningful things are, then we can take a look at the relationship we have and how it applies to screens. Because sometimes our most meaningful things, are when we have our most meaningful things, that's what keeps our brain, and our brain will go to. We think about when we take away screens or when screens have to end, what that feels like for our child, or what we feel as the parent. That's because we're stopping something that they really enjoy. And so you may have heard the expression, like, if you take away someone's boat, you have to be able to give them a raft or something else, right? You can't just take away their boat. And so in this moment, when we take away screens are taken away, since it's like time for them to end, or say parents choose to do that as a consequence for the day, or they choose to have a screen-free day, what's going to take the place if that's one of your child's most meaningful things? Because that will be helpful in that transition and help support the child's own needs, as well as eliminates the opportunity for tantrums, meltdowns, things like that.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, if we can use the three favorite things, or the three most meaningful things to our child, to kind of understand why they have that deep connection to that screen, right? Why they're so intent on always being on it, or playing on it, or using it. Okay, so it's one of their top most favorite things that they have, and when we try to limit it or we try to take it away, that's when we experience those meltdowns, for lack of a better word. That makes sense. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and it's like knowing our authentic self as a parent, knowing that if our most valuable thing is our child. I was like mentioning one of my most things is how I want my most important thing is to see my kids outside getting dirty and playing. Well, when they're inside doing a screen, they're doing the opposite of my most meaningful thing. And sometimes I feel like, I don't want you guys to be inside. Like I don't know if it's resentful or angry or annoyed. A lot of different feelings and emotions arise because I want my children to have this different experience in their childhood. And when I see them on the screen, I'm like, this is my perception, and and that's the thing about perceptions. They're not right or wrong. They're just information about ourselves. And so if I notice that about my kids, but I also notice my authentic self is saying, screaming, like, I want you to be playing. It goes to my next part of our conversation, Megan, which is striking a balance. Where can we strike a balance? So we're being an authentic parent, and we're letting our kids know that we feel this way or that about the screens. And some parents might be like, I love being on my screen too. And so if that's what's most meaningful to you and that's your perception, that's not right or wrong. It's just information about you. And then you can meet your child there. If you enjoy being on a screen, then maybe you can play video games with your kiddo. Maybe you can have a special time during the day where we do sometimes. There's some research on about a 15-45, which means 15 minutes playing, 45 minutes where they play by themselves, and where you play screens with them for 15 minutes and get a night worth of 45, or whatever time works for you. And then you have an idea. You're stepping into their world, and you're meeting them with something that you both feel is important, being connected digitally. And so you're playing. Sometimes you can often go on the same phone. You can be in a game together, and that's comparably like going outside and throwing a baseball or kicking a soccer ball with your child. It has similar principles in how the relationship is happening, because the child can feel that you are at ease as well, and you are able to feel their ease, and there's that relationship there between the two of you. Now, for kind of looping back to what I was saying about how I'm like, but I want my kids to be outside, and to kind of fall into that range or somewhere around there where you feel like you're not happy with how the screen situation is feeling authentically to you, then you can create some boundaries and parameters around it, and have them be part of the process depending on their age. For example, you can invite them to say, okay, we're going to have screen time today. It's going to be 1 hour. You don't want to have a half hour in the morning, half an hour in the afternoon, or you can have a whole hour, at 3 o'clock. But it's important that I suggest having it at a similar time every week or every day. Each family, sometimes week schedules change, they're variable, So trying to find a plan so it's predictable to your child. And if you've heard any of Megan and I's other conversations, you've heard us talk about the predictability for children and making the unknown known, especially during COVID. Those two things lessen the anxiety in ourselves and in our children. So creating a predictable schedule, like, okay, 3 o'clock to 4 is screen time. They know it. It's they know when it starts. They know when it ends. And you have also maybe some time for you. And if you're going to be playing with them, that's a chance for you to schedule your time with them where you're, hey, I'm going to be playing with you for the first 15 minutes. I can't wait to see what happens in Roblox today, as an example. And then you're part of the screen time experience. And I feel that, as we're talking through here, that Megan, I would like to launch just a little bit about how even to create that time as well. If that's okay, if I go on a side tangent for a second.
No, please do. I think it's important, everything you've discussed so far. I mean, screens and digitally connecting is here to stay. So I'd love to learn more.
That is very true. It's true. It is like, how do we have this journey together, but in recognizing what's important to each of us, like in the relationship. And so if you have a predictable time and the children know when it's going to be, then you can help build healthy habits into screen time. For example, this can even be part of their school day as well if the teacher doesn't already do this, or sometimes the teacher might already do this, where we have brain breaks where, after 20 minutes, we take a brain break. So I call it the 20-20-20. After 20 minutes, you take your brain, you stop, look away from the screen, either look away or move around for at least 20 seconds. And the other part of it is I suggest you look around 20 feet away. You don't just look in the space around you, but you look around you in your either out the window, across the room. And that just allows the child to orient to their environment and to reconnect with self. And so if you're playing with your kiddo or if you're in the house, you can set the timer for 20 minutes. It's like, hey, break. And then 20 seconds, and then go back to it. It can even be longer than 20 seconds. Some parents, we suggest come and get a drink, look outside, get some fresh air. Okay, now you can go back to it. But these are building healthy habits. So as grown-ups, as many of us are working from home or we're working on the screen in a store or on having to use a computer in many different facets of our life or on our phone, we take a break. If we can build in the healthy habit of a 20-20-20 or whatever kind of system works well for you and your family, this allows us to stay connected. So when we come off of the screen, we don't have that big, which many of you probably can connect with for ourselves, but also with witnessing your children, like that big, kind of just trying to find your bearings when you come away from the screen, which is something I would like to just share next. And I've mentioned this before in other podcasts, the transition out of screen time. Which that makes the unknown known. Again, we let them know, the child know our time frame. We have about 5 minutes left, and remember. And then sometimes I like to remind them. Remember, we said we're going to go outside and shoot hoops when this is over, or remember we're going to play and do that. You're going to be doing that drawing. It's going to be finished after this. Letting them know what you're bridging the next activity, so they know what's going on. Remember, we have soccer practice, and right after this is done. So it's kind of just giving them, it's connecting their brain to the next thing, that it's also maybe connecting to something that's most meaningful to them. So I mentioned something else that's most meaningful in their life, for example, soccer, in the case of my 6-year-old. And then also I like to have a drink or something crunchy, like carrot sticks, crackers, something near them. So when they're done, or it's right in the kitchen where they come out to and say, the food is out here for you to have, and they have something, because that kind of feedback helps transition them when they're feeling dysregulated to regulated after being on a screen. So there's a lot of little things here, I know, nuances that I talked about, but even just kind of experimenting with them and seeing if one works and this doesn't work, or trying to build on what something else you use in your home when we try to transition away from, say, watching a TV or a movie. Maybe try that with screens. Those kind of things can kind of cross between, both genres.
Yeah, those sounds like really great tricks, to try. And I think also it kind of leads right back into your predictability, right? That you're giving them a 5-minute heads up. You're setting the stage for what you're doing next, but they know right after they put the screen down, they're going to get a snack or a drink, and that's kind of the the routine that you're setting. So All of that is great, but what can we do, and what can we do as parents to help model healthy screen behavior? 'Cause I'm sure that goes a long way as well.
Well, I think so, kind of just even recapping on what you just said, implying those things to yourself, letting them know, I have 10 more minutes on this I have to do for work, or I'm shopping online, I'm going to be done in 10 minutes, and then I'll be out over to play or check this out, what you're doing. Letting the kiddos know the predictability of when you're going to be off screen. And also it gives yourself some boundaries. Like, okay, I'm going to take a break right now and step away from this, but I can come back to it. Just like our kids, if we let them, they know they have to end. They know tomorrow at 3 o'clock they get to come back to it. It's not over forever. They're not like reaching in the universe, like, when do I get to come back and do my most favorite thing? Letting ourselves know and letting our kids know when we can revisit it next help support the transition. I think part of it too, sometimes we talk about punishment with using like screens. Like, okay, you wouldn't get off, you eat too much, you can't, or something else happens unrelated to screens, and we're like, you can't use your screen tomorrow. Now, I'm speaking from personal experience here because my partner and I often will say that, and we've been trying really hard to pause and realize, okay, this is the most meaningful thing. We have to have a lifeboat out there for them to do something else or choose something else as a consequence, or maybe shift it a little bit of what, you have to start screen time 10 minutes later today. Or we're going to limit our screen time to only 45 minutes today because of the choices we made earlier. You know, and so it's kind of being creative with it, and realizing that sometimes, or our kiddo on Saturday, both our kids, they got off. We thought they transitioned well. They got a snack. They came into the kitchen, and then all of a sudden it was like pushing, screaming, name calling. It was like they were dysregulated still from coming off of the screen. And so we decided as a family we're taking a screen-free day on Sunday, and we decided we didn't use our phones until the evening. And then when they were in bed, we got on and did whatever we had to do as a family to get ready for the week and work and things like that. And not everyone can do that as well as parents, but even if we limit our screen time as parents and model that, like, hey, sometimes we just need to take a break from this as a whole family and do something else, it can really speak volumes for long-term habits for our children to learn when they're balancing their screen and being engaged in other areas that are most meaningful to them.
Okay. It sounds like just really being mindful, right? And your
very
example
much so.
your example is so something I can really connect with, but I can see how even while you were talking, I'm like, oh, I could kind of tweak that to fit our schedule or our routine. So just great, really just great food for thought.
And even at the end of all this, I like come and I'm like, oh, I can decide, because it can be even activating to think about, like, like those moments when you start to think about those moments that are really tricky with screens and how stressful they can be for the family, but at the same time how they are integrated in such a part of our life because of COVID too. Even more so, as you mentioned at the beginning, that's part of their life experience now. Even so, how it's like really just trying to meet them in their meaningful place and figuring out balance and mindfulness for sure. And mindfulness is connecting with self and our environment around us. So it's truly our connection to self.
Well, that sounds like a kind of a perfect time a place to wrap up here. Sarah, really, thank you so much for sharing your expertise, your experience, and we really appreciate you talking to us today.
No problem. It was a pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to returning back again. And I hope all of our listeners are having a wonderful spring, and thank you so much again.
Great. Well, thanks everyone for listening, and please stay tuned for more HMC HealthWorks podcasts.